Have you ever wondered, what if we aren't alone in this world, or even this reality? Maybe the things that go bump in the night, or those strange lights in the sky, are windows to other worlds. Let's take a closer look and delve into the world of unexplained existence. Imagine going about your day, going to places you've been 100 times before, but on one particular day, you stumble into a place that looks completely different to how you remember it, seemingly as if it had been transformed overnight. Yet when you go back, it's the same way it has always been before. Today is one such story of a man and his time-slip encounter. In his own words, this is the true story of Alan Gama. It was a warm August evening. I was on the late turn, driving a bus for the London and County bus services from Reigate to Sevenoaks. At the time, this was a new route for us, only having been run from the spring of 1994. The route ran from Reigate to West Ham in Kent, following the A25 to Sevenoaks. It went on to serve a few places around Sevenoaks before returning to Reigate just after midnight. Not many people used the bus service, but for a few it was an essential service. Every night, a young lady used to arrive at Sevenoaks bus station in town centre at around 11:20 p.m, in time to board the bus for an 11:28 departure. She would get off another bus with her boyfriend, have a kiss and a short chat, and board my bus. She was there almost every night without fail, and travelled to her home in the small village called Bessel Green. On the evening of the 14th of August 1996, she didn't turn up. Her other bus came and went, which was my signal to go. When I drove out of the bus station and turned into the high street, on my right I noticed a bright star shining in the night sky. The star seemed to be keeping up with my movements along the route out of the town. When I arrived at a small roundabout at Sunbridge, the star was directly in front of me. After turning left, it should have again been seen on my right, just behind me. It wasn't. It was just ahead. As I drove along the road, it disappeared totally from sight, along the A25 in total darkness. No street lights or traffic passing over the way. I headed towards Bessel Green. As I approached, probably about a quarter of a mile away, I saw what appeared to be the bright star very low. In fact, it appeared to be level with the road surface. This was confirmed as I drove nearer and nearer. It became larger and larger until I drove into it. As I entered the light, the road surface changed. The bus rocked side to side with the sound of the rough flint type road on the tyres. I immediately slowed down to stop on the side of the road. My near side front wheel rested in a pothole directly outside the King's Head public house. The pub didn't look right. It looked dowdy, beige-brown in colour, and appeared to be floodlit. I guess a film crew was shooting a film, and straight away looked around to see if I could see others. There was no one there. Cottages in the village had dim candlelight shining from the windows. I saw in the background what appeared to be a large church with candlelight shining from the windows. I then heard the clip-clop of horses' hooves and saw a horse and an open cart slowly walking towards the pub. The cart had people sitting either side, facing one another on a wooden bench-type seat, laughing between themselves, seemingly very happy. The ladies wore flat caps and white blouses. The men wore jackets, white shirts, and ordinary trousers. The colour of the material for the jackets, skirts, and flat caps were all the same colour, a brownish green. The material looked a type of tweed. They appeared to be people who may have worked on a farm, ending their day in the pub after a hard day's work. When the cart pulled up, the driver stepped down and walked around the back of the cart to help the ladies off a short ladder, who were still giggling, and one by one went into the pub. One lady, who was sitting in the cart while the others were getting off, looked straight at me. As they pushed the door to go in, they seemed to step over a beam which ran along the bottom of the door. I could hear the door slam after each person went through. This made me think the door was kept closed by a spring. While this was going on, I opened the bus door to go outside. A voice in my mind said, "If you go outside, you won't come back. Just look and see." To my right, and the sun was just setting across the fields, as I turned my head to look at the pub, the voice said, "You've seen enough, it's time to go." I put the bus in gear and slowly drove off the flint road. It seemed to hit a small step as the bus went onto tarmac and into the darkness. The running time for the route was very tight, and I knew without looking at my watch I was running very late. Excited, I wanted to tell someone what I had seen. I completed the route. As I approached Reigate bus garage, the little voice said, "Don't tell anyone." When I looked at my watch to check the time, I was early. I clocked off and went home. The next day, inquisitive, I went to visit the pub, bought a pint of beer and looked around. A few regulars were in, and I listened to the chatter. I would have thought what I witnessed that evening before would have been a talking point of the village. I heard no reference to this whatsoever. The following week, I bought a local newspaper to see if anyone had written in, and nobody had. I then realised I was the only one to have seen it. But what was it? What really happened that warm summer's evening? I kept my silence on what happened that night for more than 5 years. I never even told my family what I saw become apparent. A chance in a billion that I was in the right place at the right time. I broke my silence with someone in 2001 who was chatting about the supernatural, and I told him the story. He was amazed. Some years later, I read something in a newspaper about ley lines and their significance along the A25. I began to believe what I saw was a build-up of energy from a ley line. In 2006, I revisited the pub with a friend who I let in on the story. We asked ourselves questions. One was, why could I see the pub if there was a tree between my line of view? The answer was, the tree wasn't planted since the last war, so wasn't there that evening. Why could I see the sun setting across the fields if there are houses and trees across the road? Because the houses again had been built since the last war. How was the lady who looked straight at me didn't see me? Because I wasn't born and the bus hadn't been made. I was invisible to all. Why wasn't I late back to the bus garage? It's almost as if time had stopped for those few minutes. What was the significance of the star that seemed to be tracking the bus? Was there a connection or just a coincidence? No one knows, but all I can say is this experience was one of the most remarkable things I have ever seen. We concluded that somehow I had gone back 100 years in time. If I had stepped outside, as the voice said, I know I would have never come back. I wonder whether people who disappear without a trace go in this way and merely step into the past. No one will ever know, but all these years later, I am pleased to be able to tell this story. Have any of you experienced similar encounters to this? And do you believe it's possible for us to slip through time by accident? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching Unexplained Existence.